Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the alien message arrived. The blue hologram appeared above his desk on the bridge of the Earth Defender, showing symbols he had never seen before. The computer translated the strange, writing into English words that made his blood run cold. The message came from something called the Galactic Tribunal. Jake had heard rumors about this group of alien judges who made decisions for the galaxy, but Earth had never dealt with them directly. The message was not friendly. It was a legal summons ordering Earth to appear in court within 30 days. Jake read the charges 3 times before he believed them. Earth was accused of expanding too fast across space. The aliens said humans were being too aggressive by building colonies on new worlds. They claimed Earth was breaking some ancient rules about how species should grow and spread through the galaxy. The worst part was the punishment they threatened. If Earth was found guilty, all human colonies would be shut down. Human ships would be banned from leaving the solar system. Earth would become a prison planet, cut off from the rest of the galaxy forever. Jake called Earth Command immediately. Admiral Kate Williams appeared on his screen within minutes, her face tight with worry. She had received the same message at headquarters on Earth. The situation was worse than Heisey. Jake had imagined. The aliens had been watching Earth for decades. They knew about every human colony, every trade route, every military ship. The Galactic Tribunal had detailed records of human expansion that went back 50 years. They had been building a case against Earth this whole time. Admiral Williams explained what she knew about the alien court. The Galactic Tribunal was controlled by 2 powerful alien races. The Vector were crystal beings who had ruled space for thousands of years. They believed in slow, careful expansion that took centuries to complete. The Nether Collective were gas clouds that thought in ways humans could barely understand. They saw rapid change as dangerous chaos that both alien races looked down on younger species like humans. They thought Earth was like a wild animal that needed to be caged before it caused trouble. The tribunal had the power to enforce their decisions with military force. Dozens of alien species would support them if they declared war on Earth. Ambassador Lisa Grant would represent Earth at the trial. She was the best diplomat humanity had, with years of experience dealing with alien cultures. But even she seemed worried about their chances. The evidence against Earth was strong, and the alien judges were already convinced that humans were guilty. Jake's ship was ordered to escort Ambassador Grant to the trial. The location was a massive court station orbiting a neutral world called Centaura Prime. The station was bigger than Earth's largest cities, with courtrooms that could hold thousands of aliens from different species. During the 3-week journey to Centaura Prime, Jake learned more about what Earth was facing. The Galactic Tribunal had rules that were thousands of years old. These rules said that new species had to develop slowly and ask permission before expanding beyond their home systems. They were supposed to accept guidance from older alien races. For at least 500 years, Earth had broken every single rule. Humans had developed faster-than-light travel on their own without alien help. They had built 17 colonies in just 50 years, which was incredibly fast by galactic standards. Worst of all, they had refused to ask permission or accept guidance from the established alien powers. The prosecution had hundreds of witnesses ready to testify against Earth. Alien merchants complained that human traders were too competitive and drove down prices. Military leaders from other species claimed human ships were too aggressive in defending their territory. Even some of Earth's potential allies were staying quiet, afraid to anger the powerful tribunal. Ambassador Grant tried to prepare a defense, but the legal system was stacked against them. The court operated under alien law that humans barely understood. The judges had already made up their minds based on reports from alien observers. The trial would be more like a sentencing hearing than a fair legal proceeding. As the Earth Defender approached the court station, Jake could see thousands of alien ships surrounding the massive structure. Representatives from hundreds of different species had come to watch humanity's trial. Most of them seemed to view it as entertainment, a chance to see the upstart humans get put in their place. The station itself was a work of art, built from materials that glowed with their own inner light. Crystal spires reached out in all directions, connected by bridges that seemed to float in empty space. At the center was the main courtroom, a dome large enough to hold a small city. Jake felt a cold fear in his stomach as he realized what they were up against. This was not just a legal trial, but a test of humanity's right to exist as a free species in the galaxy. The aliens had the power, the law, and the numbers on their side. But Jake also felt something else, a stubborn human pride that refused to back down. Earth had come this far by refusing to give up when things looked impossible. They had survived wars, plagues, and disasters that would have destroyed weaker species. Whatever happened in that courtroom, humans would face it with their heads held high. The main courtroom of the Galactic Tribunal was unlike anything humans had ever seen. The chamber stretched for miles in every direction, its crystal walls rising up into shadows that seemed to have no end. Strange lights floated through the air like living stars, casting rainbow colors across the faces of thousands of alien beings. High Magistrate Velfin dominated the center of the room like a mountain made of living crystal. His body was 20 feet tall and carved from what looked like blue diamond, but Jake could see thoughts moving through him like lightning trapped in ice. When Velfin spoke, his voice boomed through the chamber without any need for speakers or microphones. The other judges sat on platforms that floated around the main bench. Most were Nether Collective members who looked like clouds of glowing gas shaped roughly like people. They whispered to each other in sounds like wind through leaves, their forms shifting and changing as they talked. Ambassador Lisa Grant looked tiny as she walked to the defendant's platform. She wore her best diplomatic uniform, but it seemed plain and simple compared to the flowing robes and glowing bodies of the alien representatives around her. Jake watched from the human delegation section, feeling helpless as the woman who represented all of humanity took her place. The charges were read in a voice that dripped with contempt. Prosecutor Zethara of the Nether Collective spoke in harmonious tones that somehow managed to sound both beautiful and threatening. She listed humanity's crimes like a teacher scolding a badly behaved child. First was the charge of reckless expansion. Humans had spread to 17 star systems in 50 years, which violated the sacred expansion protocols. According to galactic law, new species were supposed to expand slowly over centuries, not decades. They were supposed to ask permission before settling each new world. Second was the charge of technological disruption. Humans had developed faster than light travel independently, without guidance from established alien races. This was considered dangerous because it meant human technology had not been properly tested and approved by galactic authorities. Third was the charge of economic interference. Human traders were undercutting established merchants by offering better prices and faster service. This disrupted trade relationships that had been stable for thousands of years. The evidence against humanity was overwhelming. Holographic displays showed human colonies spreading across space like a plague. Trade records revealed human businesses stealing customers from alien companies. Military reports documented human ships moving through space without proper authorization. Each piece of evidence drew laughter and angry comments from the assembled aliens. The Kree-Tak delegation made clicking sounds that their translators turned into insults about human intelligence. The Astani sang mocking songs about the chaos humans brought wherever they went. Jake watched Ambassador Grant try to respond to each accusation. But her words seemed to bounce off the alien judges like stones thrown at a mountain. When she tried to explain that human expansion was peaceful, the prosecutor showed videos of human military ships patrolling their territory. When she claimed human technology was safe, alien experts testified about theoretical dangers that might exist. The worst part was how the other aliens in the courtroom reacted to everything humans said. Every time Ambassador Grant spoke, waves of laughter swept through the chamber. Aliens pointed at her with appendages that looked like claws, tentacles, or energy beams. Some made sounds that the translators could not even convert into words. Commander. Rick Barnes sat next to Jake in the gallery, his hands clenched into fists as he watched the mockery. Rick had fought in the border wars against human pirates and terrorists. He had seen real enemies and real threats, but nothing had prepared him for the casual contempt these aliens showed toward his entire species. Dr. Helen Wade had brought boxes of research, data showing all the good things humans had done in space. She had records of human doctors treating alien diseases, human engineers helping to repair damaged stations, human explorers sharing star charts with anyone who asked. But the judges refused to look at any of it, claiming it was not relevant to the charges. The prosecution called witness after witness to testify against Earth. The hegemony of Thrax complained that human ships had disrupted their carefully planned shipping routes by finding faster ways to travel between systems. The Merchant Guild of Andromeda claimed human traders were destroying galactic commerce by charging fair prices instead of the inflated rates other species had agreed to maintain. Even worse were the testimonies from species that had never actually met humans. They spoke about the terrible things they had heard about Earth from other aliens. They repeated rumors and gossip as if they were proven facts. Some claimed humans were violent warmongers based on old television shows that alien observers had intercepted from Earth decades ago. Ambassador Grant tried to call her own witnesses, but most of the aliens, who might have spoken in favor of humanity, had mysteriously decided to stay away from the trial. A few brave souls appeared by hologram from distant worlds, but their testimonies were brief and carefully neutral. Nobody wanted to anger the powerful galactic tribunal by supporting the humans too strongly. As the trial continued, it became clear that this was not really about law or justice. The alien judges had already decided that humans were guilty. They were going through the motions of a trial to make their punishment seem official and legal. Magistrate Velthin made this obvious with his comments throughout the proceedings. When Ambassador Grant tried to argue that humans had the right to expand peacefully, he interrupted her to lecture about the importance of maintaining galactic stability. When she pointed out that human colonies had never attacked anyone, he dismissed this as irrelevant to the charges. The other judges were even worse. They whispered among themselves during human testimony, clearly not listening to anything Ambassador Grant said. Some of them seemed to be conducting other business, reviewing documents that had nothing to do with the trial. Jake felt his anger growing as he watched the mockery continue. These aliens were treating humanity like insects that needed to be stepped on before they became a real problem. They were not interested in the truth or in justice. They just wanted to show the galaxy that no young species could challenge the established order. But Jake also noticed something else. Not all the aliens in the courtroom were laughing. Some of the smaller species, the ones who sat in the back sections and spoke quietly among themselves, seemed uncomfortable with what they were seeing. A few even looked sympathetic when Ambassador Grant made particularly strong points about human achievements. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood at the defendant's podium, feeling the weight of her entire species resting on her shoulders. She had spent months preparing for this moment, but nothing could have readied her for the sheer hostility radiating from the alien judges. Her carefully crafted defense was crumbling under their relentless attacks. She began with humanity's greatest achievements, hoping to show the court that Earth deserved respect rather than punishment. She spoke about human art and music, about the poetry and literature that expressed the beauty of the human spirit. She displayed holographic images of Earth's greatest cities and natural wonders, trying to show that humans were not the savage barbarians the prosecution claimed. The alien. Judges barely glanced at her evidence. High Magistrate Velthan interrupted her presentation multiple times, claiming that cultural achievements were irrelevant to the charges of illegal expansion and technological disruption. When she tried to show examples of human creativity and innovation, he dismissed them as proof that humans were too unpredictable to be trusted with advanced technology. Grant shifted to her legal arguments, pointing out that Earth had never signed the sacred expansion protocols that the prosecution claimed humans had violated. How could humanity be guilty of breaking laws they had never agreed to follow? She argued that the Galactic Tribunal had no legal authority over Earth, since humans had never joined their legal system. Prosecutor Zithara responded with a tone that sounded like wind chimes made of ice. She explained that galactic law applied to all spacefaring species, whether they agreed to it or not. Any race that developed faster than light travel automatically fell under tribunal jurisdiction. Earth's ignorance of galactic law was no excuse for breaking it. The prosecution, then, presented what they called the most damaging evidence against humanity. They showed detailed records of human military exercises, claiming they proved Earth was preparing for aggressive expansion. They displayed images of human warships, arguing that no peaceful species needed such heavily armed vessels. Commander Rick Barnes shifted uncomfortably in his seat as he watched the prosecutor twist innocent defensive preparations into evidence of human aggression. The ships she was showing had been built to protect human colonies from pirates and raiders, not to attack alien worlds. But the judges seemed eager to believe the worst possible interpretation of everything humans did. Dr. Helen Wade tried to present scientific evidence of humanity's positive contributions to galactic knowledge. She had documented cases where human researchers had shared important discoveries freely with other species, asking for nothing in return. She showed records of human medical teams that had helped fight diseases on alien worlds. The tribunal dismissed her evidence as propaganda. They claimed that sharing technology without going through proper galactic approval channels was another example of human recklessness. The fact that human medical techniques had saved alien lives was irrelevant because the treatments had not been tested by official galactic health authorities. Every argument Ambassador Grant made was turned against her. When she pointed out that human expansion had been peaceful, the prosecution argued that this just proved humans were skilled at hiding their true aggressive intentions. When she emphasized human willingness to help other species, they claimed this was evidence of cultural contamination that threatened galactic diversity. The witness testimonies became even more damaging as the trial continued. Species after species took the stand to complain about human behavior. The proud hegemony of Thrax described how human trade routes had disrupted their traditional shipping lanes, costing them billions in lost revenue. The Merchant Guild of Andromeda presented evidence that human businesses were driving established alien companies out of business through unfair competition. They argued that humans used primitive but effective manufacturing techniques that allowed them to undercut prices that had been stable for centuries. Even minor alien races joined the attack on humanity. The Zeph Council complained that human explorers had discovered valuable mineral deposits on worlds that aliens had been planning to claim in a few hundred years. The Orbital Collective accused humans of crowding space lanes with their efficient but non-standard ship designs. Ambassador Grant tried to cross-examine these witnesses, but the tribunal's rules made it almost impossible to challenge their testimony. She was not allowed to question their motives or point out contradictions in their stories. When she tried to present evidence that contradicted alien claims, the judges ruled it inadmissible for technical reasons she did not understand. The most frustrating part was how the aliens twisted human virtues into evidence of guilt. Human curiosity became dangerous recklessness. Human generosity became cultural imperialism. Human efficiency became unfair competition. Every positive trait that made humans successful in space was reframed as a threat to galactic stability. Watched from the gallery as Ambassador Grant's composure began to crack under the pressure. She had been trained for diplomatic negotiations, where both sides wanted to reach an agreement. This was not a negotiation, but an execution disguised as a trial. The aliens had already decided to find humanity guilty, and they were just going through the motions of due process. The worst moment came when the prosecution called their final witness. Ambassador Keth of the Stellar Council had once been considered a friend to humanity. He had participated in the first diplomatic contacts between Earth and galactic civilization. His species had even signed trade agreements with human colonies. But now Keth stood before the tribunal and spoke about his deep regret over supporting human expansion. He claimed that he had been deceived by human charm and apparent sincerity. He testified that humans had violated the spirit of their agreements by expanding too aggressively and competing too successfully with established alien businesses. The betrayal hit Ambassador Grant like a physical blow. She had trusted Keth and had worked with him for years to build positive relationships between humanity and the galaxy. Seeing him turn against Earth in humanity's darkest hour shattered her faith in everything she had worked to achieve. As Keth finished his testimony, Ambassador Grant realized that her formal defense had failed completely. Every argument she had made had been turned against her. Every piece of evidence she had presented had been dismissed or reinterpreted as proof of human guilt. The alien judges were not interested in truth or justice, but only in justifying a decision they had already made. The final blow came when High Magistrate Velthan announced that the tribunal would not hear any more evidence in humanity's favor. He claimed that the prosecution had already presented overwhelming proof of human guilt, and that further testimony would just waste the court's valuable time. Ambassador Grant stood alone at her podium, surrounded by thousands of hostile aliens who had already condemned her species. She thought about the billions of humans back on Earth and the colonies, all depending on her to save them from banishment and isolation. She had failed them all, but as she prepared to make her closing statement, knowing it would probably be humanity's last words before the galaxy, she noticed something that gave her a tiny spark of hope. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Mitchell was standing up in the human delegation section, his hand raised to request permission to address the court. The entire courtroom fell silent as Lieutenant Colonel Sam Mitchell stood up from his seat in the human delegation section. He was not supposed to be part of the trial proceedings, just an observer who had come along to provide military security for Ambassador Grant. But something in his weathered face and steady posture commanded attention, even from the alien judges. Sam was not like the polished diplomats and scientists who had been speaking for humanity. He was a soldier, plain and simple, with gray hair and scars that told stories of battles fought in the dark spaces between stars. His uniform was neat but worn, bearing medals that meant nothing to the aliens, but everything to the humans who knew what they represented. High Magistrate Valthon's crystalline form pulsed with annoyance as Sam approached the witness platform. The alien judge had been preparing to announce the tribunal's verdict, confident that humanity's fate was sealed. This interruption was not part of his carefully planned script. Sam activated the witness request beacon, a simple device that any being in the courtroom could use to address the tribunal. It was an ancient right built into galactic law, impossible for even the powerful judges to ignore. The beacon's light cast a blue glow across Sam's face as he waited for permission to speak. The alien judges whispered among themselves in languages that sounded like breaking glass and distant thunder. They clearly had not expected this development and were unsure how to handle it. Ambassador Grant looked up at Sam with a mixture of hope and fear, wondering what he could possibly say that would make any difference. Prosecutor Zethara objected. Immediately, her gaseous form swirling with agitation, as she claimed that the witness was not qualified to address the charges against humanity. She argued that military personnel had no standing in a legal proceeding about expansion protocols and trade violations. But Sam just smiled, a cold expression that made even some of the alien spectators shift uncomfortably in their seats. He had seen that same look on the faces of enemies who thought they had won before the real fighting started. The prosecutor's objection told him everything he needed to know about how this trial had been conducted. High Magistrate Velthan grudgingly granted Sam permission to speak, but with strict limitations. He would be allowed to make a brief statement only, with no presentation of evidence or cross-examination of previous witnesses. The judge made it clear that this was a courtesy extended to a defeated species, not a real opportunity to change the outcome. Sam stepped up to the witness platform and looked out over the vast courtroom filled with thousands of alien beings. Most of them were staring at him with curiosity or contempt, expecting another futile attempt at human diplomacy. They had no idea what was coming. He began speaking in a voice that carried clearly through the chamber without any electronic amplification. There was something about the way he spoke that made even the most arrogant aliens pay attention. This was not the polished rhetoric of a diplomat, but the direct honesty of someone who had seen too much to waste time on pretty words. Sam started by acknowledging what everyone in the courtroom already knew. Humanity was guilty of every charge the prosecution had brought against them. Humans had expanded too fast, developed technology too quickly, and disrupted established galactic systems. They had broken rules and ignored protocols that had kept the galaxy stable for thousands of years. The alien judges nodded in satisfaction, thinking that the human was finally admitting defeat. But Sam was just getting started, and his next words caught them completely off guard. He asked a simple question that cut through all the legal arguments and diplomatic speeches like a knife. Through Silk Dot, why were those rules there in the first place? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sam did not wait for an answer before continuing. He talked about what he had learned during his years of military service, about the difference between rules that protected people and rules that protected power. He spoke about the times when following orders would have meant letting innocent people die. The aliens in the courtroom began to stir uncomfortably as Sam's words hit home. He was not attacking their laws directly, but questioning the motivations behind them. He suggested that maybe the sacred expansion protocols were not about maintaining galactic stability, but about making sure that new species never grew strong enough to challenge the established order. High Magistrate Velthan tried to interrupt, claiming that Sam was straying from the legal issues at hand. But Sam just looked at the crystalline judge with the same steady gaze he had used on enemy commanders who tried to intimidate him. He had permission to speak, and he was going to use every second of it. Sam shifted his approach, moving from philosophy to concrete examples. He started talking about specific incidents that had happened during humanity's expansion into space. These were not the diplomatic success stories that Ambassador Grant had tried to present, but raw accounts of life and death situations where human actions had real consequences. He described the Kepler Station incident, though he did not give it that name yet. He just talked about a time when human ships had detected an emergency signal from an alien facility. According to galactic protocols, they should have filed a formal request for permission to provide assistance, then waited for approval from multiple bureaucratic agencies. The approval process would have taken weeks or months. The aliens on the station would have been dead long before help arrived through proper channels. So the human ships had ignored the protocols and responded immediately, saving hundreds of lives in the process. Sam's words created a ripple of unease through the courtroom. Many of the aliens present knew about similar incidents where human recklessness had actually saved lives. But they had never heard these stories told from a human perspective, without diplomatic softening or legal justification. The prosecutor tried to object again, claiming that Sam was presenting irrelevant anecdotal evidence. But other voices in the courtroom were starting to speak up, asking questions about the specific incidents Sam had mentioned. Some of the smaller alien species were beginning to look at the human witness with new interest. Sam continued his testimony, building momentum as he described case after case where human willingness to break rules had produced positive results. He talked about human medical teams that had treated plague victims without waiting for official health clearances. He described human engineers who had shared life-saving technology without going through the patent approval process. Each example was carefully chosen to highlight the same theme. When emergencies arose, when people were in danger, when quick action was needed to save lives, humans acted first and worried about paperwork later. They were willing to face punishment for breaking rules if it meant helping others. The alien judges were growing visibly agitated as Sam spoke. They could see that his words were having an effect on the courtroom audience. Some of the species that had testified against humanity were now looking uncomfortable, remembering times when they had benefited from human rule-breaking. But Sam was not finished yet. He had saved his most powerful ammunition for last, and he was about to reveal evidence that would transform the entire trial. Sam reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out a small data device that gleamed under the courtroom's strange lighting. The simple gesture sent waves of tension through the chamber as thousands of aliens realized that the human soldier had brought evidence that nobody had seen before. High Magistrate Velthan's crystalline form flickered with alarm as Sam activated the device. The alien judge tried to stop him, claiming that no new evidence could be presented at this stage of the trial. But Sam had followed galactic legal procedures perfectly, submitting his evidence request through proper channels hours before taking the stand. The first holographic display that appeared above the courtroom showed the Kepler station disaster in full detail. The massive Vector research facility hung in space like a dying star, its hull breached and its life support systems failing. Emergency beacons screamed across multiple frequencies as 300,000 aliens faced certain death. The timestamp on the recording showed the exact moment when human ships had detected the distress signal. Captain Susan Parker's vessel, the Fearless, was the closest ship to the station, but it was still 6 hours away at maximum speed. According to galactic law, Parker should have immediately contacted the Galactic Emergency Response Authority and waited for instructions. Sam let the courtroom watch as the official response unfolded in real time. The emergency request crawled through bureaucratic channels, requiring approval from the Regional Safety Council, the Interspecies Medical Authority, and the Galactic Insurance Board. Each agency demanded detailed forms and risk assessments before they would authorize a rescue mission. The estimated response time for official help was 14 standard days. The aliens on Kepler Station had maybe 6 hours before their life support completely failed. Sam let that fact sink in as he watched the Vector delegation shift uncomfortably in their floating platforms. Then he showed what actually happened. Captain Parker had ignored every protocol and regulation in the book. She had diverted her ship immediately, putting her crew at risk and violating a dozen different laws. Her rescue teams had boarded the failing station without proper authorization, working frantically to evacuate civilians while the structure collapsed around them. The holographic recording showed human rescue workers carrying alien children through corridors filled with poisonous gas. It showed human engineers staying behind to restart failing life support systems while their own air supplies ran low. It showed Captain Parker herself refusing to leave until every single alien, civilian was safely aboard human ships. The courtroom was dead silent as the recording ended with all 300,000 Vector colonists safe aboard human vessels. Sam looked directly at the Vector judges as he spoke his next words, asking them if they remembered filing formal complaints about the humans who had saved their people's lives. The answer was yes. The Vector government had officially censured Captain Parker for violating galactic protocols. They had demanded compensation for damage to their station caused by unauthorized human rescue operations. They had used the incident as evidence that humans were too reckless to be trusted with. Advanced Technology. Sam activated his device again, showing incident after incident where human rule-breaking had saved alien lives. The plague outbreak on Nether colonies, where human medical teams had ignored quarantine laws to deliver life-saving drugs. The pirate attacks on neutral trading posts, where human warships had intervened without waiting for authorization from galactic peacekeeping forces. Each case followed the same pattern. Aliens faced death or disaster, while bureaucratic procedures ground slowly forward. Humans ignored the rules and acted immediately to help. Then alien governments filed complaints about human violations of proper protocol, using their own rescue as evidence against humanity. The prosecutor tried desperately to regain control of the situation. Zethara objected that the evidence was irrelevant to the charges, that good intentions did not excuse violations of galactic law. She argued that humans could not be allowed to decide for themselves which rules to follow and which to ignore. But Sam was ready for that argument. He activated another set of recordings, these ones showing what happened when the galactic system worked exactly as designed. They showed emergency situations where all proper procedures were followed, all forms were filed correctly, and all authorizations were obtained through appropriate channels. They also showed the mass graves that resulted from bureaucratic efficiency. Entire colonies that had died while waiting for officially approved relief supplies. Plague victims who had perished while medical authorization requests moved through committee reviews. Pirates who had destroyed dozens of ships while peacekeeping forces completed their deployment paperwork. The alien judges tried to dismiss these examples as tragic but necessary costs of maintaining galactic stability. They argued that occasional losses were acceptable if they prevented the chaos that would result from everyone deciding which laws to follow. But their words sounded hollow as images of dead aliens filled the courtroom displays. Sam pressed his advantage, showing evidence that the prosecution had deliberately hidden from the court. He revealed communications between alien governments, discussing how to present the case against humanity. They had agreed to emphasize every human mistake while ignoring every human success. The most damaging evidence was a recorded conversation between High Magistrate Velthin and several other senior judges. They discussed their plans to find humanity guilty regardless of the evidence, viewing the trial as an opportunity to make an example that would discourage other young species from challenging established authority. The courtroom erupted in shocked whispers and angry protests as aliens realized they had been watching a predetermined show trial rather than a fair legal proceeding. Even species that had supported the case against humanity began to question what they had witnessed. Sam continued relentlessly, presenting evidence of human contributions to galactic civilization that the prosecution had systematically suppressed. Human agricultural techniques that had ended famines on 7 different worlds. Human engineering innovations that had improved safety and efficiency throughout the galaxy. Human cultural exchanges that had enriched the lives of billions of aliens. Importantly, Sam showed evidence of human military actions that had protected neutral worlds from genuine threats, while alien peacekeeping forces had been trapped in bureaucratic delays. Human ships had fought off raiders, pirates, and rogue military units that threatened innocent civilians. Commander Alex Turner's combat footage was particularly compelling. It showed human Marines fighting house-to-house battles on occupied colonies, taking casualties to protect alien civilians they had never met. The same human soldiers who were being portrayed as dangerous aggressors were shown risking their lives to save alien children from genuine monsters. Dr. Amy Foster's research logs provided the final piece of evidence Sam needed. They showed years of human scientific work that had been shared freely with other species, asking for nothing in return. Human researchers had developed solutions to problems that had plagued galactic civilization for centuries, then given away their discoveries without patents or profit. As Sam's presentation continued, the mood in the courtroom shifted dramatically. The alien spectators who had been laughing at humanity hours earlier now sat in uncomfortable silence. The species that had testified against Earth were avoiding eye contact with the human delegation. Even some of the judges seemed shaken by what they were hearing. But Sam was not finished yet. He had one final revelation that would expose the true nature of galactic civilization and force everyone in the courtroom to confront an uncomfortable truth about themselves. Sam stood silent for a long moment, letting the weight of his evidence settle over the courtroom like a heavy blanket. The alien judges seemed frozen in their seats, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The carefully constructed case against humanity had been torn apart piece by piece, revealing the ugly truth beneath galactic civilization's polished surface. When Sam finally spoke again, his voice carried a different tone. Gone was the patient explanation of human actions and the methodical presentation of evidence. Now he sounded like a soldier who had seen the real face of war and was tired of pretending otherwise. He looked directly at High Magistrate Vel Thon as he delivered his final words. Sam told the crystalline judge that he was right about one thing. Humans were guilty of every charge brought against them. They had expanded too fast, developed too quickly, and disrupted systems that had been stable for thousands of years. But Sam refused to apologize for any of it. He explained that humans had learned something during their short time in space that the older alien races seemed to have forgotten. Sometimes the system was wrong. Sometimes the rules protected the powerful instead of the innocent. Sometimes the only moral choice was to break the law. The courtroom was absolutely silent as Sam continued his speech. He talked about what he had observed during his time serving alongside other species in joint military operations. He had seen alien soldiers follow orders to abandon civilians because proper evacuation procedures had not been approved. He had watched alien medics let wounded enemies die because treating them violated protocol. Sam described the moment when he had finally understood the difference between human and alien thinking. It had happened during a rescue mission on a mining station that was collapsing after an asteroid impact. The alien commander had ordered everyone to retreat because the situation was too dangerous according to safety regulations. The human team had ignored the order and gone back into the collapsing structure to search for survivors. They had found 12 alien workers trapped in a sealed section, including several children. The aliens would have died if the humans had followed proper procedure, but they were saved because humans were willing to risk their own lives for strangers. After the rescue, the alien commander had filed a formal complaint against the human team for disobeying direct orders. The workers who had been saved testified in support of the complaint, arguing that the humans had set a dangerous precedent by ignoring established authority. Even the alien children who owed their lives to human courage were taught to view their rescuers as reckless rule-breakers. Sam let that story sink in before delivering his knockout punch. He activated his data device one final time, showing a comprehensive analysis of galactic civilization that human researchers had compiled over decades of observation. The numbers were staggering and painted a picture that no one in the courtroom wanted to see. Galactic civilization had achieved remarkable stability and order, but at a terrible cost. The rigid adherence to protocol and procedure had created a society where individual initiative was discouraged and moral responsibility was diffused through layers of bureaucracy. When disaster struck, the system responded slowly and inefficiently, leading to preventable deaths and suffering. The analysis showed that human intervention had saved more alien lives in 50 years than official galactic emergency services had saved in the previous 5 centuries. Human technological innovations had solved problems that alien committees had been studying for millennia without results. Human willingness to act without authorization had prevented dozens of humanitarian disasters. But the most damning evidence was what Sam revealed about the prosecution's real motives. The charges against humanity were not really about expansion, protocols, or trade violations. They were about fear. The established alien races were terrified that humans would inspire other young species to start thinking for themselves instead of accepting traditional authority. Sam displayed secret communications between various alien governments discussing the human problem. They worried that human success would encourage other species to question why they needed to ask permission before helping their neighbors. They feared that human independence would undermine the careful balance of power that kept the galaxy stable and predictable. The trial was never meant to determine human guilt or innocence. It was designed to send a message to every species in the galaxy that challenging the established order would result in punishment and isolation. Humanity was being sacrificed to preserve a system that valued control over compassion and stability. Over justice. As Sam's presentation ended, the courtroom remained frozen in shocked silence. The alien judges seemed unable to speak, their carefully prepared verdict suddenly meaningless in the face of overwhelming evidence. The spectators who had come to watch humanity's humiliation now found themselves confronting uncomfortable truths about their own civilization. Sam stepped down from the witness platform and walked slowly back to his seat, passing thousands of alien beings who could not meet his eyes. Ambassador Grant watched him with a mixture of awe and gratitude, realizing that this simple soldier had accomplished what all her diplomatic training could not achieve. High Magistrate Velthan finally found his voice, but the words came out weak and uncertain. He tried to dismiss Sam's evidence as propaganda and emotional manipulation, claiming that the rule of law could not be subordinated to individual conscience. But his arguments sounded hollow after what the courtroom had witnessed. Other judges attempted to restore their authority by threatening to find humanity in contempt of court for presenting unauthorized evidence. They argued that proper procedures had been violated and that the trial should be declared invalid. But their threats only reinforced Sam's point about prioritizing rules over results. The real judgment came not from the tribunal, but from the alien spectators themselves. Delegates from dozens of species began leaving their seats and approaching the human section of the courtroom. They spoke in quiet voices about times when they had needed help that never came through official channels. They shared stories about friends and family members who had died while proper paperwork was being processed. Within hours of Sam's testimony, informal meetings were taking place throughout the court station. Alien representatives who had never spoken to humans before were quietly asking about establishing direct communication channels outside official diplomatic protocols. They wanted to know if Earth would be willing to provide assistance in future emergencies, regardless of what the Galactic Tribunal decided. The formal charges against humanity were quietly dropped 6 months later, buried in bureaucratic procedures that ensured no one had to admit the trial had been a mistake. But the real victory was already complete. Sam's stand had exposed the fundamental weakness in galactic civilization and inspired others to question authority. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Earth Defender as the court station grew smaller in the distance. The ship was escorting a convoy of alien vessels, carrying representatives from 47 different species who wanted to establish new relationships with humanity. They were not seeking formal treaties or official agreements, but simple understandings between people who shared common values. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had taken the stand, and in doing so, had shown others that it was possible to choose conscience over convenience, action over approval, and justice over the mere appearance of order. The aliens had mocked Earth until the human took the stand, but now they were learning what it meant to stand for something worth defending.